Hello, everybody. I'm Jonathan from Boredom Sated, and today I'm going to go over a little bit of a different build with you guys. It is the same wizard we were talking about before with the Blade Singer, but I'm changing some stuff around. We're adding in some multi-class, and it'll make it easier to do certain things, and it's more fun in certain other ways. Now, obviously, there's lots of different ways to multi-class this, but we'll get into a couple of possibilities, and we're going to go with the way that I would find the most fun, which is the reason why I'm saying it. But before we get into that, first thing we need to say is that 94% of our views are from non-subscribers, and really the thing that's slowing us down from being able to make these videos better is more subscribers. So please subscribe to make it a little bit easier for us, because we'd really like to make these look a little nicer, work a little better, and have a little bit better equipment to work with. So, for those of you guys who did not watch the wizard build, the wizard build that we're talking about here is based on playing the Blade Singer. I will talk about that in a minute. However, first let's go over the idea that most likely, for all of the builds that we've talked about, we're going over the idea that you are not rolling for stats. You are using the base build out of the book. Remember, the base build out of the book means you can't really have great stats because those stats are kind of dirt. And the main problem that a lot of people had with the Blade Singer was the fact that you need 2 stats to maximize the ability. Well, this is how you make it so you only need 1. Now, you still need dexterity, because dexterity is still going to be your armor class for the most part. So you still need to have at least a decent dex, which means we're still going to be starting by taking a high elf. Remember, as a high elf, you get +2 dex, +1 intelligence. You get an extra cantrip because, that's something you absolutely need. And you get elf weapon training, which is, again, something we don't actually care about for this build, but we need it just for the stats. It makes it so you can start with definitely a minimum of a 16 in dex and a 16 in wisdom, or 16 in dex and 16 in intelligence. And we're going to use at least 2 stat bumps just to get us up to a 20 in intelligence, because that's the one we absolutely have to have. So the changes for this build actually come right at the beginning, because the way that I would start this build is, instead of starting in Wizard, I would be starting in Artificer. Why Artificer? And why start in Artificer? There's 2 reasons. 1, as an Artificer, your proficiencies are the main reason why. Your saving throws as an Artificer are Constitution and Intelligence instead of Wisdom and Intelligence. The reason this matters is because one of the main things you need to make sure you do is keep up your Shadowblade. So you need to make sure you have a high Constitution to make sure that you can keep up your, or you don't need to have a high Constitution score, but you want to make sure that your ability to maintain your spellcasting, your concentration, is high. And this makes it so we automatically now have our proficiency modifier added to our saving throws. And that is a fantastic ability right off the bat. So we can start with Artificer, and the reason why we're going to start with Artificer is because we're going to go at least the 3 levels in Artificer so that we can choose our battle type, and we're going to go Battlesmith. Why are we going Battlesmith? The main reason why we're going Battlesmith is because we get an ability called Battle Ready. When you reach 3rd level, your combat training and your experiments with magic have paid off in 2 ways. First, you gain proficiency with martial weapons, which doesn't matter, but that's not the point. And 2, when you attack with a magic weapon, you can use your intelligence modifier instead of strength or dexterity for the attack and damage. Now, Shadowblade is literally a weapon made out of magic. So some people might make the argument that you cannot use Shadowblade with this because it's magical, because Shadowblade is not a weapon. It is, it is a weapon. There's an argument that can be made there, but I'm assuming that you win that argument for the purposes of this build, and that you are allowed to use your intelligence modifier now to attack and damage. This makes it so you now no longer have to maximize both dexterity and intelligence for this build. You just have to maximize intelligence, which is obviously a lot easier to do. Now, at 3rd level, as an Artificer, you also get 1st level spell slots, which is nice. In there is included shield, which means you already have it. And the other thing is you also get something called a Steel Defender. The problem is, because we're not going to be taking a lot of levels in Artificer, the Steel Defender's hit points will be dirt. The hit points are 2 plus your intelligence modifier plus 5 times your Artificer level. Since my plan for this build is to go 3 or 4 levels in Artificer, depending on what version you want to work with, the Steel Defender is really not going to have enough hit points to matter, but the rest of its abilities go up with proficiency bonus, which makes it so that having it around, even though it might only survive 1 or 2 hits, still isn't that bad of a thing. Now, personally, would I probably still bother to have it? Probably not, but having the ability to have it just in case is very nice. It is immune to poison and immune to charm, exhaustion, and poison for conditions. It's very cool in those ways, and it does have the ability to deflect attacks as well, to make it so that someone can get disadvantage on attacks made against you or someone else within 5 feet of it, which is really, really cool. So that's the reason why we're going into Artificer. There's other Artificer abilities early. Infuse item is really good. So remember, a lot of the builds we've talked about do not use magic items, like standard magic items, because the basic rules of D&D do not actually have them be needed. But infuse item is something that you do get as an Artificer, and that is very cool to be able to do a couple of basic magic items at low level that you can just add on to your build. You could even be doing a +1 to your armor, +1 armor at this point, if you would not be given so one otherwise. So after we're done with Artificer, we're going to go into our Wizard. Obviously, we've already talked about this in the other video, but in case you haven't watched that other video, I do want to go over the general abilities of the Wizard here. So the plan here is to go probably 14 levels in Wizard. 14 levels in Wizard gets us 7th level spells. Because we have 3 levels in Artificer, we are actually going to be having an 8th level spell slot, even though we don't know any 8th level spells. But that is high enough for our max level Shadowblade. And max level Shadowblade, of course, does 5d8 damage per swing. Just to remind everyone, Shadowblade is a 2nd level spell, concentration up to 1 minute. You weave together threads of shadow to create a sort of solidified gloom in your hand. This magic sword lasts until the spell ends. It counts as a simple melee weapon with which you are proficient. It deals 2d8 psychic damage on a hit and has finesse, light, and thrown properties. In addition, when you use a sword to attack a target that is in dim light or darkness, you make the attack roll with advantage. And when you cast it at 3rd or 4th, it goes up to 3d8, 5th or 6th, 4d8, and 7th or higher, 5d8. So we can do 5d8 per swing with this attack. We get multiple attacks because we will get there as we go into Bladesinger and all that fun stuff. So it's the reason why the Shadowblade build is nice. Also, the casting time for Shadowblade is a bonus action, which is quite nice. It's concentration up to 1 minute, which is again the reason why we want to make sure our concentration is good. So, Bladesinger, the reason why Bladesinger is fantastic is because of several things. First, it makes it so you are now a wizard that can wear light armor, although with our other build we can already wear medium. But when you Blade Song, you can invoke Elven magic called the Blade Song, provided that you're not wearing medium or heavy armor or using a shield. So we're going to stick to that light armor. You can use a bonus action to start the Blade Song, which lasts for 1 minute. It ends early if you are incapacitated, or if you don medium or heavy armor or a shield, or if you use 2 hands to make an attack with a weapon. You can dismiss the Blade Song at any time. No action is required. While your Blade Song is active, you gain the following benefits. First, you gain an AC bonus equal to your intelligence modifier, which of course is fantastic. Your walking speed increases by 10 feet, and since we're an elf, I think that gets us up to a 40, which is kind of nice. Or 45, depending on how things are working out. You have advantage on dexterity acrobatics checks, and you gain a bonus to your constitution saving throw when you are making concentration checks, and the bonus is equal to our intelligence modifier. The reason why this matters is because now we have our minimum of our intelligence modifier and our proficiency modifier to any concentration spell, And at max level, that means that we've got an 11 at absolute minimum. That's if we have no Constitution modifier at all, which would be a really bad idea. But if we have no Constitution modifier at all, we can still basically maintain a spell on, as long as we're, for any attack that hits at all, you automatically maintain because it's a DC 10 at minimum. And you only have to even start rolling if they deal at least 26 points of damage, because remember, if we have a plus 11, we roll a 1. 1 doesn't fail this check, which means a 12 is fine if you take 24 or 25 points. And if you have a Constitution modifier, it just gets that much better. At 6th level, you get extra attack. At 10th level, you can start using your spells to take reduced damage. Song of Defense is okay, but it is a reaction, and usually we're going to be using a reaction for other things. And of course, the main reason why we have to go at least 14 levels in this build is for Song of Victory. Starting at 14th level, you can add your Intelligence modifier to the damage of your melee attacks while your Blade Song is active. So, we've got Artificer to make it so we can use our Intelligence to hit and damage. Song of Victory makes it so we get to use our Intelligence modifier to damage again. We get to add our Dexterity and our Intelligence to our armor class. We can wear light armor. We can have magical light armor. Which means, again, if you're wearing the basic light armor, let's call it studded leather, we're looking at a 12 plus. Magical makes it a 13 plus. Intelligence makes it an 18. Dexterity makes it, right now we're talking about having a dexterity of 16, which makes it a 24. Shield makes it a 29. That's where we are right now, and we act like all to do this is basically just maximizing our Intelligence modifier, which we can do by level. In this build, we're looking at level 11. So, the blade singing parts, it work exactly the same way as our other build. Shadowblade still gives us all of those abilities. In general, we probably want to use our reaction to either cast Shield for the plus 5 AC, or we want to cast it for Absorb Elements to make it so that if we're hit by a spell, we could absorb some of that, which is a cool ability, which is another first level spell. Counterspell is still one of the most powerful abilities because we're basically a wizard that kills other casters. And that also is going to bring us to the idea of what to do with your other bonuses. What do you do when you get stat ups, stat increases? So at level 12 in Wizard, you obviously get a third stat increase. You can use it to increase your dexterity by 1 again to make it so your AC will go up to... while you're blade singing, your AC will go up to 24 or 25, which is obviously very nice. You could also use the dexterity modifier. You could, instead of using the dexterity modifier, you could take several possible feats. Included in those feats would be Defensive Duelist, which would mean that you can, instead of casting Shield, you can just say, I add my proficiency modifier, which by that time would be quite good. Another option would be Mage Slayer, which would make it so that if you are doing that and they try to cast spells at you, you can just do attacks of opportunity against them, and it really hurts them badly. But it is a reaction, so it's probably not the way it would go. If you're really worried about keeping your spell slots up, you can always go Warcaster, which gives you the advantage on saving throws to maintain concentration. And it also gives you the ability to, with a reaction, when you're doing an attack of opportunity, you can cast certain things, usually just cantrips, or things that take one action. All of those are good possibilities. The Dex or the Warcaster is probably the way that I would go. Now, there's a couple of options we can go from here. We have 3 levels left. The way that I will go and the way that I will put out the character sheet for is going into 3 levels of Fighter. Now, why 3 levels of Fighter? If you've seen a couple of the other videos, you already know the answer to this. First, fighting style. Because we are using a one-handed weapon, we can do a fighting style of just straight up giving us +2 to damage. With dueling, if you're wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that weapon. which obviously can work quite well. Another option can be going again just straight up into defense to be able to give yourself another +1 to AC. At level 2, you get Action Surge. Action Surge is, as always, a fantastic ability, which gives you the ability to, once per short or long rest, or once per short or long rest. Once you finish a short or long rest, you get it back. You can basically take an additional action. So being able to cast a spell and take 2 attacks, or be able to make 4 attacks, does seem quite good. And the main reason I want to go into this is because I really like the idea of going into Psi Warrior. With Psi Warrior, especially if you max out your abilities, you will have, at max level, you will have 12 psionic energy dice. And among the things you can do with it would be Psionic Strike and Psionic Protective Field. Psionic Strike is basically allowing you to make your weapon do even more psychic damage, this changes it to adds in more force damage, so now you're doing force and psychic damage. And when that happens, you can immediately deal an additional d6 plus your intelligence modifier in damage. So if we've gone this version of our build, once per round, we can make one of our attacks deal 1d6 plus 5d8 plus triple intelligence modifier plus 2. So we're probably looking at 5d8 plus a d6 plus 17. And I don't know about you, but that's a pretty significant amount of damage, especially considering we can do that 12 times per day. Protective Field is also very nice. When you or another creature you can see within 30 feet takes damage, you can use your reaction to expend a psionic energy die, roll the die, and reduce the damage taken by the number plus your intelligence modifier. Again, very fun. So going fighter is a really good way to go. It's the way that I would probably go. But a lot of you guys are going to say, well, you can still get the fighting style by going paladin, and that also means you can use your spell slots to do Divine Smite. And you know what? You're absolutely right. The only issue with that is you need to... getting into fighter requires a 13 strength or dex, which we definitely have, whereas going into paladin requires you to have a 13 strength and 13 charisma. Because we're trying to maximize out our dexterity and our intelligence, we probably won't have a 13 strength and 13 charisma if we have a 13 in either of them. And that's the main reason why I don't multi-class this into paladin as the main, but if you have the stats for it, go right ahead. It does make your ability very, very strong. One other way to go, of course, is if you don't want to go into the fighter at all, you could just go Artificer and Wizard. If you go 6 levels of Artificer and 4 levels of Wizard, you will get another stat boost, and that will also make it so your spell slot, which can be considered 17th level, which means you will get a 9th level spell slot, even though, again, the highest level spell you'll know will be a level 7 spell. But that's still, again, pretty strong. And that would get you a 4th ability boost, which you could use to make it so you would have a 20 intelligence and 20 dexterity, or you could use it for another different feat. We've already gone over some really good feats that you can take. So, that is my version of the Wizard Blade Singer while multi-classing. It does make it so you only need the 1 stat, so it does kind of maximize its abilities that much more. It does say in the spell that it creates a magic weapon, and it does say in the Artificer that when you're wielding a magic weapon, so it's really hard to make the argument that this build doesn't work. You do get a little helper friend, even though his hit points won't be very high. If he survives, because it doesn't really matter, you could just make a new one every day, he does do some really fun stuff. You've got a lot of things that you need your bonus action for. You got a lot of things you need your reaction for. But overall, this is a very powerful build. This build, again, kind of murders things. It's got a very, very, very high AC. It can have an even higher AC, and you can do a lot of optional things. And you're still a wizard, so you can still take any of the role-playing spells or role-playing abilities you want to make it so that your character is just very, very powerful. So, If you like this build, if you like this version, let me know. If you don't like it, if there's something specific you don't like, let me know. But either way, like or dislike, subscribe, let us know what's going on. And I'm Jonathan from Boredom State, and I'll see you next time.